The damp, sticky clump rolled out when I accidentally knocked over the trash can while tidying up the bedroom of the guy I liked, Liam. It was half-wrapped in tissue, looking fresh, maybe from last night, maybe this morning. I can't even begin to describe the emotions that flooded me at that moment. My mom, Susan, called while I was cleaning Liam's bedroom. It had been about a month since Liam had given me a spare key to his apartment. I'd been coming over almost every day since then. Even though he hadn't officially said anything, we both seemed to understand the unspoken shift in our relationship. After the usual small talk about my life, Mom suddenly mentioned that my cousin, Victoria, was back in the country. My hand, which had been wiping down the nightstand, froze the instant I heard her name. I quickly switched off the speakerphone. Through the slightly ajar door, I could see Liam sitting on the sofa, quietly playing on his phone. His expression was his usual calm, detached one, utterly unreadable. He probably didn't hear, I thought. Relieved, I lowered my voice and asked Mom, but wasn't she supposed to get married next month? Why is she back so suddenly? You didn't know? Mom sounded hesitant, like she was holding something back. Finally, she sighed and told me that Victoria's fiancé had cheated on her right before the wedding. She'd caught him red-handed, and naturally, the wedding was off. Those few words were enough to unsettle me completely. Even though Victoria was my cousin, she was only a few months older than me. We'd grown up together, practically inseparable. Hearing that she was going through something like this hurt. And then there was the other reason. Victoria was the only girlfriend Liam had ever acknowledged throughout his entire college years. At that time, I was, at best, a classmate who was slightly closer to Liam than others. After I found out Liam and Victoria were dating, I intentionally kept my distance. But every time I saw Victoria at family gatherings, she'd make a point of talking to me about Liam. She'd always say how grateful she was to me for introducing her to such a great guy like Liam. It took me a while to realize that she'd known about my feelings for Liam all along. She was just using this awkward way to make me see the reality of the situation. This uncomfortable dynamic continued until right before graduation. They had a disagreement about their post-graduation plans, and Victoria ultimately decided to study abroad, breaking up with Liam in the process. Liam was devastated for a long time. I was the one who stayed by his side during that period, watching him get drunk and slowly, painfully recover. Perhaps it was that companionship that made Liam treat me a little differently, a little more special than others. As Mom went on about the absurdity of Victoria's fiancé's infidelity, she got more and more agitated, her voice rising. Afraid Liam would hear, I couldn't help but turn my head to peek at him through the doorway. Liam was now playing with his cat. He was looking down, his long, slender fingers gently stroking the cat's back, the line of his profile and neck. Exceptionally handsome. But his face still held almost no expression. The cat was lying lazily beside him, eyes half closed, looking utterly content. This 8-month-old ragdoll cat, whom I've named Snowball, was a gift I'd given Liam 6 months ago, when I finally mustered the courage to confess my feelings after hearing the news of Victoria's engagement. He'd accepted the gift that day and even named the cat on the spot, saying Snowball was just like me, soft and small. He had a rare, gentle look in his eyes when he said that, a faint smile on his lips, which further fueled my courage to confess. But perhaps sensing what I was about to say, Liam suddenly averted his gaze, his voice dropping slightly. Jenny, just wait a little longer, okay? My heart instantly sank. Maybe it was at that moment that I finally realized that, even though Victoria had a boyfriend, even though they were so close to getting married, Liam was willing to wait for her, just like I was willing to wait for him. Jenny. Mom's voice pulled me back to the present. I snapped back to attention and absent-mindedly answered my mom, huh? But my gaze didn't leave Liam in the living room. He seemed to be on a call now, a faint smile playing on his lips. A strong sense of foreboding suddenly washed over me. Liam's lips moved slightly, as if he was whispering a name. Vicky. Mom was still talking, but I was just staring blankly, my temples throbbing, my palms cold. The trash can by the bed was suddenly knocked over by Snowball, who had run into the room. As I reached down to pick it up, a box of Okamoto condoms tumbled out. Along with it rolled that sticky, tissue-wrapped clump. It looked fresh, maybe from last night, maybe this morning. In that instant, I was numb. I even mechanically grabbed some tissues from the nightstand and tossed the mess back into the trash can. Mom's voice came through the phone. Oh, that's right, I meant to ask you earlier. Your aunt said Victoria was feeling down and Wanted a change of scenery. She bought a ticket to your city yesterday. She should have arrived last night. Didn't she contact you? It hit me like a lightning bolt. I remembered the dozen or so calls I'd made to Liam last night, all unanswered. And even when I came over today, Liam hadn't offered a single word of explanation. Everything was clear now. Victoria hadn't contacted me last night. The person she'd contacted was Liam. I don't know how I hung up the phone or how I walked out of the bedroom. When my eyes met Liam's, I hesitated. Before I could even ask the question burning in my mind, he dismissed me. I have something to take care of later, Jenny. You should head home first. The unconscious coldness in his tone made my chest tighten, making it hard to breathe. I lowered my head, my fingers digging into my palms. 6 months ago, after my failed confession, I'd curled up in bed, pulled the covers over my head, and told myself over and over again that I needed to let go. I woke up the next day and went about my work and life as usual, but I never reached out to him again. Until 2 months ago, when I almost got lost in the mountains. The moment he found me, Liam hugged me tightly for the first time. His warm breath on my neck, he called my name urgently, Jenny, Jenny. I could feel his worry, his body trembling slightly. After that, our relationship progressed rapidly. He even gave me a spare key to his apartment. I thought this time, I might finally get what I'd always wanted. But then, Victoria and her boyfriend broke up. It was Liam who got what he'd always wanted. Now, Liam was back to his old self, the one that kept me at arm's length. It felt like those 2 months of gentle affection were nothing but an illusion, a figment of my imagination. The sound of the door lock turning brought me back to reality. Victoria was standing at the doorway, her gaze flickering between us, filled with a complex mix of emotions. Her eyes held embarrassment and a knowing guilt and pity. It felt like a heavy, sticky weight was pressing down on my chest, suffocating me. Victoria saw me, then glanced at Liam. She hesitated for a second, then quickly explained that she'd arrived in a rush last night, and Liam had kindly offered her a place to stay. She was here now because she'd accidentally left something in the guest room. She emphasized the words, guest room, pointedly. After a moment, Liam said, "Okay, I'll get it for you." I listened to their clumsy excuses in silence, forcing a stiff smile. My gaze shifted, and I caught sight of the familiar set of keys in Victoria's hand. My head started to pound. It seemed that, even in this, I wasn't unique. Liam quickly returned from the room with a bag. As Victoria reached for it, Liam suddenly grabbed her wrist. Didn't the doctor say it was a mild reaction? Why are you still having an allergic reaction? His brow was furrowed, but his voice was gentle. This kind of soft-spoken attentiveness, even during our most affectionate 2 months, Liam had never shown me. Victoria's wrist was pale, with a few small red bumps, almost imperceptible. She raised an eyebrow slightly and smiled at Liam. "It's almost gone. The swelling is down." Liam stared at her intently, the tense line of his lips finally softening. "That's good." They stood there in the living room, talking, oblivious to my presence. I felt a slight sense of unreality. Liam, when he was with her, always seemed to be like this. Every word, every look, filled with intense affection, completely different from the perfunctory way he treated me. Later, after they broke up, Liam pretended to have moved on, but he refused to let anyone get close. And now, they were back together. Liam could finally shed his layers of pretense, almost deliberately, forcefully showing Victoria that he didn't want to lose her again. In that moment, I felt a sharp, gnawing jealousy. Just then, Snowball rubbed against my legs, meowing insistently. He must be starving. I found his food and fed him. Even after I was done, the two of them were still talking. Not wanting to stay and awkwardly watch them reconnect, I gathered my things, ready to leave. As I reached the door, I paused, thought for a moment, and took the spare key out of my pocket, placing it on the table by the door. Some words I didn't want to hear him say. It would be too humiliating. But then I heard Liam's voice behind me. "Victoria is allergic to cat fur." I turned to look at him, confused about what he meant. Liam just raised his eyes slightly, his tone flat, but leaving no room for argument. "Take Snowball with you." The air hung heavy with a momentary silence. I opened my mouth, but I didn't know what to say, just staring blankly at Liam. It seemed that when sadness reached its peak, even tears wouldn't come. "Jenny, please don't misunderstand." Suddenly, my hand was held, the warmth from her palm snapping me back to reality. Victoria had somehow walked over to me. She patted the back of my hand reassuringly, her voice low but gentle. Liam said earlier that I'm new here, with no place to stay, and it's not safe for me to stay in a hotel alone, so he's letting me stay here for a few days. After I've had some time to relax and go back, he'll come to get Snowball. She turned to look at Liam, a slight smile on her lips. I didn't realize that after all these years, he's still so considerate. I looked at her, and after a moment of processing, I found it somewhat amusing. If there was anyone in this world who knew exactly how to stab me in the heart, it would be Victoria. Even though I knew she was innocent and unintentional. I hoped she was unintentional, at least. I still remembered how Liam was known for being aloof in our department back in college. He came from a good family and was even better looking, but he was so distant and detached that people were hesitant to approach him. The reason I got to know Liam was mainly because we were assigned to the same lab group. We were incredibly busy during that time, and Victoria, feeling sorry for my long hours, would bring me nutritious soup almost every day. Gradually, Liam and Victoria started to interact more, and the soup gradually went from 1 serving to 2. Later, after they got together, Victoria joked that she didn't want to leave me out, so she'd always invite me to join them. After I declined several times, Victoria stopped asking. One time, I was working late in the lab, and somehow I ended up going out to eat with them. Victoria and I were chatting, and I didn't notice that Liam had ordered 3 servings of scallion oil noodles. Victoria loved noodles, but she hated scallions. Her eyebrows furrowed slightly, but she didn't say anything, picking up her chopsticks and taking small bites of the noodles. When you like someone, you subconsciously pay attention to their every move, and Liam was no exception. He noticed that Victoria seemed to be deliberately avoiding the scallions, and his brow furrowed. He suddenly pulled out a napkin and placed it on the table. Under Victoria's surprised gaze, he meticulously picked out every single piece of scallion from her bowl. After he finished, Liam looked at Victoria, who was still staring at him with wide eyes, his expression softening, and he smiled. "Now you can eat." Victoria, at that time, had used the same tone, whispering to me halfway through the meal, her face flushed. "Jenny, Liam is so thoughtful." I didn't say anything, looking at the bowl of noodles in front of Victoria, feeling a bit dazed. After that, Liam often privately asked me about Victoria's preferences. I told him everything, dutifully playing the role of a wing woman, but I never went out with them again. My thoughts returned to the present. I pulled my hand away, suppressing the bitterness in my heart, and walked straight to the utility room. I gathered some of Snowball's daily necessities and picked up Snowball, who was stretching lazily on the sofa. I didn't look at Liam once during the entire process. As I passed Victoria again, I paused, forcing a slight smile. Liam has never been a particularly thoughtful person. It's just that you're the one he's being thoughtful to. The rain started on my way home. Luckily, my place was only about a 15-minute walk from Liam's. After showering, I gave Snowball a bath too. By the time I was finished, it was almost 10 o'clock. Victoria sent me a WeChat message. "Jenny, I really didn't come back to steal Liam from you." I thought about it for a long time, and finally replied, "But you slept together last night, didn't you?" There was no reply. Looking at my phone screen, which was about to go dark, I suddenly remembered something. A few days ago, my best friend, Sarah, was in town for a business trip, and Liam and I took her out to dinner. While we were waiting for our food, Sarah's gaze kept shifting between Liam and me. I felt a little uncomfortable and subconsciously looked up at Liam. Liam's gaze didn't waver. He naturally took my hand, enclosing it in his palm, gently stroking it. It was like an acknowledgement, or perhaps a declaration. The warmth spread from my hand, making my entire heart feel tingly and flushed. I finally came back to my senses when the waiter brought our food. Then I heard Sarah talking to the waiter, saying they'd accidentally ordered the wrong dish, that her friend didn't eat scallions, and asking if they could change the scallion oil chicken. I froze for a few seconds, then looked up and met Liam's gaze. Seeing the fleeting surprise in his eyes, I lowered my head, feeling utterly pathetic at that moment. Perhaps I was really insignificant to him. Otherwise, why hadn't Liam noticed, after all this time, that I, like Victoria, didn't like scallions either? I should have realized it sooner. After spacing out for a while longer, I opened my laptop, ready to start looking for a new place to live. 6 months ago, I'd moved to the city because of a job transfer. Besides Liam, I didn't know anyone here, and he was the one who'd helped me find this apartment. He'd said it was his uncle's vacant property, that no one had been living in it. Liam's uncle, Simon, was a distant relative. He'd graduated from a prestigious university abroad with a dual master's degree in finance and business administration, yet he was only 3 years older than Liam. Come to think of it, I'd actually met him once. It was at Liam's birthday party, the one where I'd confessed and failed. I didn't need to look up to feel the mocking, pitying gazes of everyone present. In that moment of awkwardness and humiliation, only Simon, sitting in the corner, gave me a friendly smile. I didn't think about it for long before deciding to live here, and I asked Liam for Simon's WeChat, paying him the market rate rent every month. Other than that, Simon and I had no contact. Since I'd already decided to draw a clear line with Liam, I naturally couldn't continue living in this apartment. I stared at the screen for who knows how long, finding a few places in decent locations, adding the real estate agent's contact information. I gradually started to feel a bit dizzy. I rubbed my temples wearily, my vision starting to blur. Later, I simply shut down my laptop and collapsed onto the sofa, feeling completely drained. It was probably because of the rain I'd gotten caught in earlier. In my hazy state, I seemed to sense someone approaching. Then, a cool sensation touched my forehead. When I woke up again, I was lying in bed in my bedroom. It was broad daylight. The fever seemed to be gone, and my mind was incredibly clear. Staring at the ceiling for a moment, I turned my head and grabbed my phone from the nightstand. Dozens of unread WeChat messages and missed calls flooded in. There were messages from colleagues, Sarah, real estate agents, and even Victoria, who'd sent me an "I'm sorry" last night. But there was nothing from Liam. I opened our chat history. The last message was from 2 days ago. I'd said that a new romantic movie was playing, that it had good reviews, and that it was perfect for couples, asking if he wanted to go that evening. He'd replied without hesitation, "Sure, I'll buy the tickets." But then Victoria came over that night, and Liam stood me up without a second thought. I waited for him at the movie theater for a long time, sending countless messages, making countless calls, all of which were met with silence. Forcing myself to stop thinking about it, I threw back the covers and got out of bed to wash up in the bathroom. As I walked downstairs, passing the kitchen, I saw a tall, imposing figure. A pot of something was simmering on the stove, emitting a fragrant aroma. A few live shrimp were on the cutting board, and a food blogger's seafood porridge tutorial was playing from his phone. The man stood motionless, looking somewhat helpless. After a long pause, he finally reacted, following the food blogger's instructions step by step. I noticed that when the blogger in the video mentioned adding scallions, he seemed to have missed it, skipping that step entirely. Finally realizing I was watching him, the man paused, slowly turning his head to meet my gaze. "Jenny." I recognized him then. It was Simon. Simon calmly turned off his phone, a smile playing on his lips. "You just broke your fever. You need to eat something light. Go sit on the sofa. The porridge will be ready soon." I nodded instinctively, saying okay. Just as I turned to leave, he called out to me again. "Oh, right, there's something I wanted to ask your opinion on." I tilted my head slightly. "Huh?" "Our company is investing in a new project here, so I might be staying here for a while." He paused, slowing his tone. "I didn't have time to tell you last night before I came back." "I apologize." I stared into his eyes, vaguely remembering him carrying me from the sofa to the bedroom last night, bringing me water, giving me medicine, taking care of me almost all night. I felt a mixture of emotions. Besides that one encounter, Liam had rarely mentioned this uncle of his before. When he did, it was only in passing. I really hadn't expected him to be so helpful. Seeing that I didn't speak, Simon's eyes flickered. He put one hand in his pocket, the other resting naturally by his side, saying softly, "Will my staying here be an inconvenience to you?" He smiled slightly. "If you feel uncomfortable, I can find another place." I was taken aback. I immediately remembered that I was planning to move out in a few days anyway, and said, "This is your house, after all. It's no inconvenience." Simon was still in the kitchen making porridge. Bored of waiting, I took out my phone and scrolled through my WeChat moments. The first post was one Victoria had just shared. The picture was a photo taken at a movie theater. The man in the photo was wearing a black casual outfit, his head slightly lowered, showing only half of his profile. But I recognized him instantly. It was Liam. They'd gone to see the movie I'd been stood up for. Victoria had captured the final subtitle at the end of the movie, "For All the Lovers." Without realizing it, I'd opened my chat history with Liam. I tapped on the input box, but even as the screen was about to go dark, I hadn't typed a single word. It seemed I didn't even have the right to question him. Suddenly, the chat box showed that he was typing. My heart leaped into my throat. A message quickly appeared. "Snowball still has some things here. When are you free to come and get them?" It felt like a bucket of cold water had been poured over me, chilling me to the bone. I forced a smile, wondering what I was still expecting at this point. Just as I was about to reply, Simon came out of the kitchen, carrying a black clay pot. "The porridge is ready. Come try it." I instinctively closed my phone and walked towards him. Simon was holding a ladle, stirring the porridge. The freshly cooked seafood porridge was steaming. He stirred it slowly and evenly before carefully ladling it into bowls. After handing me a bowl, Simon sat down across from me, spreading his hands in a gesture of honesty. "As you saw earlier, this is my first time making seafood porridge. If there's anything you don't like about the taste, just tell me, and I'll improve it next time." Next time? My hand, holding the spoon, hovered over the porridge for a few seconds. Then I scooped up a spoonful and tasted it, looking up at him with a genuine smile. "It tastes good." He smiled slightly. "I think so too." During the meal, Simon received a phone call. He said he had to go back to the office and might be back late, telling me not to wait for him for dinner. After he left, I sat there, pondering his words, finally telling myself not to read too much into them. After finishing the porridge, my mom called me. She told me that Victoria had told her mother that she wasn't planning to go back, that she was going to settle down here. I was stunned for a few seconds before I realized the true meaning of Victoria's "I'm sorry" message from last night. After thinking for a moment, I told Mom about my plan to move. Mom was silent for a long time before carefully asking, "Did you and Liam break up?" I was taken aback. Liam and I had never been together, so how could we have broken up? "It's good that you broke up." Mom sighed, her voice sounding distant through the phone screen. "Liam is a good kid, with good prospects, but he has a proud personality. He's used to being taken care of. Your mom has seen how you two have been interacting all these years. Last time Mom came to visit you, you happened to be out with Liam that day, so Mom waited for you at your doorstep. Mom saw him drop you off. It was already late, and you're so afraid of the dark, but he just walked ahead, leaving you far behind. He didn't even notice. Not once did he turn around. Do you know how much it hurt Mom to see that?" My throat tightened. "Mom. A few days ago, when you called Mom, you were helping him tidy up his place, right? Don't think Mom doesn't know anything." Mom's voice started to crack. "Mom would rather see someone take care of you." This afternoon, I had an appointment with the real estate agent. Braving the scorching sun, I went to view several apartments, but none of them were quite satisfactory. On the way back, we hit a traffic jam. The driver, urged on by my impatience, took a shortcut, but it was still around 11 o'clock when I finally got back to the complex. It was already pitch black and my phone was about to die. My heels were killing me from the new shoes, but I ignored the pain, clenching my fists, just wanting to get back quickly. To my surprise, I saw Liam and Victoria at the corner. They were wearing athletic clothes, as if they'd just been for a run. Liam had a cigarette between his fingers, smoking it casually. Victoria was talking to him, smiling brightly. Suddenly, Victoria crouched down, as if her shoelace had come undone and she was tying it. Liam walked a few steps, noticed she wasn't following, and stopped to wait for her, then walked alongside her. The dim yellow light stretched their shadows, intertwining them, creating a sense of peaceful timelessness. I froze, watching them walk further and further away. It felt as if they were walking out of my world, step by step. A snap sound. It seemed like something inside me was slowly tearing, collapsing, and then slowly reassembling, healing. Finally, it became calm and serene. In that instant, it felt like my feelings for Liam vanished. It was already 11:30 when I got home. The living room light was surprisingly still on. Simon, wearing a gray loungewear set, was sitting on the sofa, focused on his laptop. Hearing the sound of my arrival, he turned his head slightly, looking towards the door. "You're back." The familiar, relaxed tone made me pause. I looked at him for a moment, then asked hesitantly, "Were you waiting for me?" He closed his laptop and stood up, indirectly acknowledging it. "Since you're back, I'll go upstairs to bed." I watched his retreating figure, lowering my head in thought. Over the next few days, because it was the work week, I could only look at apartments after work. But no matter how late it was, Simon would always be waiting for me in the living room. A few times, when it was really late, he insisted on me sending him my location and then drove to pick me up. One time, riding back in Simon's car, after much hesitation, I finally told him about my plans to move. He immediately slammed on the brakes. After a long pause, he said with a serious expression, "Next time, I'll go with you to look at apartments. It's not safe for you to be out alone like that." I couldn't help but suspect he had other intentions towards me. But why? Based solely on that one brief encounter? And besides, he was Liam's uncle. On Friday, I finally found an apartment that was close to my company and had a nice environment. I was just waiting to sign the contract on the weekend. On the way back, Simon and I were both somewhat quiet. That night, after showering, I went to the kitchen to cut some fruit. My attention was a bit scattered, and I accidentally cut my finger. I winced in pain, a bead of blood welling up on my fingertip. Simon rushed over, took my hand, and examined it, his brow furrowed. Then he let go of my hand. He quickly returned, holding ointment and a band-aid, and bent down to tend to my wound. His fingers were cool, and so was the ointment, but where they touched my fingertip, it felt strangely warm. After he was done, I quickly pulled my hand back. "I'm going to dry my hair." It was almost a flight in panic. I sat on the sofa with the hairdryer, about to dry my hair, when I heard Simon's low voice behind me, "Let me." One of his hands took the hairdryer, while the other reached into my hair, gently moving it around. The warm air blew on my scalp, and his fingers accidentally brushed against my ear, my neck. "Is that comfortable?" His voice was slightly husky now. I shivered, instantly standing up, my face completely flushed. The hairdryer fell to the floor, still buzzing. I bent down to pick it up, and just then, Simon also bent down, our eyes meeting unexpectedly. The sound of a keycard unlocking came from the door. I turned my head. Liam stood there, staring at us silently, his expression extremely cold. Looking at the indecipherable emotions in Liam's eyes, I was slightly lost. Was he angry? After a long, slow moment, I averted my gaze and reached down to pick up the hairdryer. Just as I was about to stand up, my legs, which had been squatting for too long, felt a bit numb and weak. I frowned. Suddenly, a large hand gripped my arm, then gently pulled me back onto the sofa. I turned my head to look at Simon. He was sitting next to me, staring at Liam, his expression unreadable. "What are you doing here so late? Are you looking for Jenny?" Liam looked at him, his expression cold, his thin lips pressed tightly together. "Why didn't you tell me you were back?" Simon's tone was calm and mild. "I'm sorry, I forgot." Liam's face became even more unpleasant. He clenched his fists, then walked directly in front of me. He stared straight at me, and it took him a long time to speak. "Why haven't you been replying to my messages?" I was stunned for a moment, only then remembering the message he'd sent last time, asking me to come to his place to get Snowball's things. Had I really not replied? These past few days, I'd been busy with work and house hunting, and when I got home, I'd been researching recipes with Simon. It seemed I really hadn't contacted him proactively in a while. After a moment of silence, I looked up at him and said, "I'm sorry, I forgot." As soon as I finished speaking, a muffled chuckle came from beside me. I turned my head and saw Simon standing up, his tone light, clearly in a good mood. "You two talk. I'll go upstairs to get something." Not long after Simon left, Liam took something out of his pocket and placed it on the table. "This is Snowball's favorite. You forgot to take it last time." I looked at the bell on the table, lowering my eyes. This cat bell was a prize Liam had won at the amusement park when we went there last time. It was also the reason I hadn't taken it. I asked calmly, "Did you come here tonight just to bring this bell?" Liam was silent. Snowball happened to walk down from upstairs. He saw Liam, meowed, and quickly went to him, rubbing affectionately against his leg. Liam picked up Snowball and sat on the sofa with him, placing Snowball on his lap and stroking his fur. After a while, he said, "See, Snowball misses me a lot." His tone was flat, seemingly hinting at something, yet seemingly meaning nothing. But I didn't want to guess anymore. I asked him directly, "Does Victoria know you're here?" Liam frowned. "What does she have to do with it?" I reminded him, "It's so late. Isn't she afraid to be alone in your apartment?" Liam was slightly taken aback, as if he'd just thought of something, and raised an eyebrow slightly. "Is that why you've been ignoring me these past few days?" I looked at him silently. He put Snowball down and tried to take my hand, but I pulled away. Seeing my resistance, his eyes darkened, his voice low and hoarse. Jenny, Victoria has suffered a great blow. She needs me right now, and that's why I let her stay at my place. I was just trying to take care of her, that's all. I found it ridiculous. I stared into his eyes, enunciating each word. Taking care of her in bed? Liam's face turned pale. Back in my room, I buried my face in the pillow, trying to calm my emotions. But my mind kept replaying Liam's words, unable to shake them off. He said that Victoria had come to him that night, crying about her fiancé's betrayal, and he'd had a lot to drink with her. He said that night had just been an accident. A sudden knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. I opened the door, and Simon was leaning against the wall, holding a bottle of red wine. I was stunned for a moment, then asked softly, "Did Liam leave?" Simon shook his head. It suddenly started pouring rain, so I told him to stay here for the night. I nodded. After a moment, I heard him ask, "I have something I want to talk to you about. Can I come in?" Seeing the bottle of red wine in his hand, my heart skipped a beat, and I didn't know where to look. My gaze wandered aimlessly, and I saw Liam standing behind Simon in the distance. He was staring at us expressionlessly. The atmosphere was slightly awkward. "Come in," I heard myself say. As soon as I closed the door, I turned around and saw that Simon had already sat down, poured himself a glass of wine, and was taking a slow sip. I didn't speak, and neither did he. After a while, he poured a small amount of red wine into another empty glass, then turned his face to look at me, his voice unhurried. "Would you like some?" I looked up and met his gaze. These past few days, because I'd been so busy, I'd been feeling tired and drained. Simon had noticed, and every night before bed, he'd have a little wine with me, saying it could relieve fatigue and promote sleep. So when he'd knocked on the door with the red wine earlier, I hadn't thought anything of it. But now, maybe it was just my imagination, but he seemed different from usual at this moment. The way he looked at me was subtly complex. My heart rate picked up slightly. I slowly walked over, took the glass from him, and took a small sip. "I'm signing the contract tomorrow morning at 10. I squeezed the glass in my hand, my voice low. Didn't you say you had a client meeting on the weekend? You don't have to drive me. I'll pack my things tonight, and I can move out tomorrow afternoon." "You're nervous right now," Simon said suddenly. I was stunned for a moment, turning to look at him. Simon stared at me, his face drawing closer. "Is it because of me?" I looked into his eyes, my mind blank for a moment. I opened my mouth, about to speak, but an untimely familiar voice came from outside the door. "Jenny." It was Liam. I stood up abruptly, but the next second, Simon grabbed my hand. He also stood up, his other hand resting on my waist, slowly embracing me from behind. His warm breath hovered near my ear, carrying the faint scent of wine. I didn't need to imagine it to know that my earlobes were definitely red. My body stiffened, and I heard him say softly, "Jenny, let's date." I told Simon that I wanted to think about it. I saw all the good things Simon did for me. He remembered that I didn't like scallions, he knew I was afraid of the dark, and he'd leave a light on for me. His gentleness and thoughtfulness had permeated every detail of my life, making it unavoidable, hard to refuse. In the past, when I was with Liam, I was used to compromising myself to accommodate him, humbly and carefully trying to decipher his moods, as if even my breath was a gift from him. I'd rarely been cared for and concerned for like this. And that's precisely why it felt so unreal. There was a momentary flicker of disappointment in Simon's eyes, but he quickly adjusted, smiling. "At least it's not an immediate rejection." I smiled faintly. When I came out with Simon, I saw Liam standing outside the door. His gaze wandered over my face for a moment, and his lip line tightened abruptly. "It took you so long to open the door. What were you doing in there?" His accusatory tone made me uncomfortable, but I didn't want to explain anything to him. Not saying anything? Feeling guilty? My face darkened, and I wanted to talk to him even less. I turned to Simon and said, "Let's go downstairs." Simon nodded, looked at Liam, and smiled faintly. "Excuse us." Liam stared at him intently, not moving. I noticed that his hands were clenched into fists, his veins bulging as if he was suppressing something. I frowned, stepping in front of Simon. "Liam, what are you doing?" Liam's breath deepened, and after a long moment, he gritted out, "Jenny, just because I made one mistake, you're going to go find another man?" He paused, then suddenly chuckled coldly. Or have you been with him since you moved in here 6 months ago? Bang. An unexpected punch, hard and precise. Liam's body staggered back 2 steps, almost falling. Before he could regain his balance, Simon punched him again. Blood soon trickled from the corner of Liam's mouth. He looked at Simon coldly, his lips twitching. Then he turned his face to look at me, his eyes filled with a murky emotion. If it had been in the past, seeing him look like this would have made my heart ache, and I might even have blamed myself. But now I was strangely calm. Liam, I don't understand why you're so angry right now. Even if I were really with Simon, you have no right to question me. I took a deep breath. From the beginning, we've had no relationship, have we? That's right. He'd never said anything, never acknowledged a relationship between us, so how could there be any talk of betrayal? Liam was stunned, his face slowly turning pale. Before he left, he stared intently at Simon, his voice emotionless. You've had feelings for her for a long time, haven't you? Simon didn't answer. In front of Liam, he held out his hand to me, his tone natural and innocent. My hand hurts. I packed all the necessities I needed to take into my suitcase. Just as I was about to zip it up, Simon stopped me. And this. He stuffed a large bag of medical supplies into the suitcase, his tone gentle. You've always been a bit clumsy and easily injured. These things are essential. I nodded, suddenly noticing something, always. Simon's fingers paused, and he abruptly stood up. I have some work to do. I watched him leave, raising an eyebrow slightly. When I was almost done packing, the real estate agent called, saying there was a problem with the apartment and asking if I could postpone moving in until next weekend. I thought about it and agreed. I went downstairs, intending to pour myself a glass of warm water, but I saw Simon sitting on the sofa, typing on his laptop. I walked over to him, glancing briefly at the screen. The proposal on it looked familiar, seemingly the one he'd been working on for the past few days. I asked, isn't that proposal already finished? Simon tapped his finger lightly on the keyboard, his jawline sharp and smooth. I added a few more creative points. I stared at his profile, casually saying, oh, then I heard him say, that way, when I show it to the client tomorrow, the chances of it being approved will be higher. Maybe I can finish early and come back. Simon turned his head to meet my gaze, his lips curving slightly. You'll be moving alone tomorrow afternoon. I'm worried. I was stunned. My heart felt like it was being tickled by something, a tingling, itchy sensation spreading, creating waves of tremors. Looking into his eyes, I remembered something belatedly. I'm moving next weekend. Simon was clearly stunned, his gaze burning, really. I felt my face and ears burning, and I turned my head to avoid his gaze, really. There was a problem with the agent's side. His eyes were filled with joy. That's too bad. The next day, Simon went to see the client, and he'd probably be back in the afternoon. Before he left, he asked again, worried, you're really not moving today? I smiled, nodding. I already told the agent last night. Simon stared at me for a moment, his voice a bit husky. Wait for me to come back. I lowered my head, my face feeling strangely hot, and softly said, okay. At noon, I called my mom. She thought I was still heartbroken over Liam, and her voice was very soft, as if she was afraid of upsetting me. I was a bit exasperated, repeatedly saying that I'd moved on, but she wouldn't believe me. Finally, she even said she wanted to introduce me to someone. I rubbed my forehead, about to refuse, but she hung up the phone and sent me someone's business card. I had to say, it was familiar. Very familiar. I took a screenshot of my chat history with my mom and sent it to Simon. There was silence on the other end for a full 10 minutes. Me, explain? The chat box kept showing that the other party was typing. Me, question mark. Simon slowly typed a line. How about I come back and tell you in person? I agreed. Around 6 o'clock in the afternoon, Simon came back. He didn't seem to be bothered by what had happened at noon. His expression was calm, and when he met my gaze, he even smiled at me. Have you eaten? I asked. He sighed slightly, his tone sounding a bit aggrieved. I was too busy. I haven't eaten all day. I frowned, turning to walk towards the kitchen. I'll go make you a simple bowl of noodles to fill your stomach. My wrist was suddenly grabbed, and Simon leaned in, looking at me with his warm gaze. I'm kidding, I ate. Meeting his gaze, my entire face felt like it was on fire, the burning temperature spreading all the way to my heart. It took me a while to find my voice, and I quickly changed the subject. How do you know my mom? He pondered for a moment, probably when I was very young. I looked at him skeptically. Simon's lips curved slightly. Actually, you knew me a long time ago too. Perhaps seeing how foolish I looked staring at him, Simon rubbed my palm, finally telling me. When we were little, our families lived very close to each other. My mom and your mom were high school classmates, so they visited each other frequently. I had a strong impression of you back then, because my mom often made me take you out to play. Once, we lost track of time, and it was dark by the time we went back. I still remember how you tightly gripped my hand, your body trembling. Slightly, but you were so stubborn, not saying a word even though tears were about to fall. That's when I realized you were afraid of the dark. My heart skipped a beat. In my memory, there seemed to be a neighbor family that was very close to ours, but I was too young then to remember the specifics. Later, we moved, and the two families lost contact. Until a year ago, my mom went to a high school reunion and they reconnected. Somehow, my mom gave your mom my WeChat. Aunt Susan sometimes posts your photos on her WeChat moments, and occasionally she'd mention you when she chatted with me. Now that I think about it, she was probably trying to set us up. Finally, Simon looked into my eyes, his tone low but serious. Jenny, Liam was right last night. I've had feelings for you for a very long time. I stared at him blankly, feeling something sprout from within my heart. Before I could react, Simon wrapped his arm around my waist, his fingers rubbing against my skin, his warm breath near my ear. Jenny, don't move out, okay? I instantly felt a surge of electricity, my whole body tingling, my heart beating so fast it felt like it was going to explode. I clutched his shirt helplessly, moving my lips to say something, but Victoria suddenly called me. The intimate atmosphere was abruptly broken. Victoria said that Liam had come back after being out in the rain last night, had been drinking all night, and had developed a high fever by noon, which had also triggered stomach pain. He refused to take medicine, and he kept repeating my name. She sobbed softly on the phone. Jenny, I really don't know what to do anymore. Can you come see him? I turned to look at Simon. He held my hand. I'll go with you. When we arrived at Liam's place, Simon didn't go inside. You two talk. I looked at him for a moment, promising, I'll be out soon. He smiled, okay. I walked into the bedroom and met Liam's gaze. He looked exhausted, his lips pale, his forehead covered in a fine layer of sweat, making his face appear even more pale and weak. I pursed my lips. Why won't you take medicine? Liam was silent for a moment, his voice hoarse. I'm sorry. I looked at him without speaking. I was really an asshole last night. I am sorry. Okay, I forgive you, I said softly. Please, take your medicine. Victoria is so worried. What about you? He asked. Are you worried? I took a breath. I am going now. Jenny, he said softly, I used to think I loved Victoria, but I just realized it was a silly obsession. You were there, always by my side. His voice changed. Jenny, I love you. But I don't love you anymore. I look in his eyes, clam. Liam, no one will wait for you forever. I didn't expect Victoria to be standing at the bedroom door. Her face was pale, her expression haggard, and her eyes were swollen. She must have heard everything Liam and I had said. Jenny, her voice was hoarse, filled with exhaustion. You won in the end. I looked at her silently. Victoria lowered her eyes. Last night, after Liam came back, he drank silently, one glass after another. No matter how much I tried to persuade him, it was no use. Later, I tried to help him to bed, but he pushed me away. I'll never forget the look in his eyes at that moment, full of disgust, without a trace of affection. Do you know what he said to me? She paused, forcing a self-deprecating smile. His eyes were bloodshot, and he said that's how it was that night. He couldn't make the same mistake again, that you would leave him. A week passed quickly. Victoria had moved out of Liam's apartment, and Liam hadn't specifically come looking for me at home. But occasionally, when Simon and I were coming back from grocery shopping, we'd happen to see him in the small garden we had to pass through. As for whether it was really a coincidence, I didn't want to think about it anymore. On Friday, Simon said it wasn't good to stay at home all the time, and he wanted to take me to do some exercise. When we got there, I realized that his idea of exercise was bungee jumping. I looked at him, able to guess what he was trying to do by bringing me here. The person in charge quickly helped us with all the safety measures and instructed us on some professional bungee jumping techniques. Are you scared? Simon asked. I smiled no. The moment I jumped, my mind felt like it went blank and my heart stopped beating. Those people and things I thought were important, those obsessions I thought I could never let go of, all vanished with the shouts and screams. At that moment, what was incredibly clear in my mind was, surprisingly, the encouraging, gentle smile on Simon's face the second I jumped. It was 9 o'clock in the evening when we got back home. After washing up, I lay in bed, picked up my phone, and called the real estate agent to tell him I wasn't moving. As compensation, I didn't ask him to return the deposit. Then I sent a WeChat message to Simon, telling him about it. Soon, there was a knock on my door. I opened the door, and Simon was standing there, looking at me silently. He must have just showered, his hair and eyes were damp. After a moment, his Adam's apple bobbed, his voice slightly husky. "Have you thought it through?" I looked at him, understanding that he was asking about what I'd said last time about considering being with him. "Yes, I've thought it through." Simon asked softly, "Then you and Liam." My tone was firm. "Liam and I won't have any relationship in the future." His lips curved slightly, as if he'd remembered something, and he said seriously, "Well, that won't do." I was stunned for a moment, then realized what he meant, and laughed softly. "All right then. Aunt-in-law it is."